Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cruisers, bruisers, and left-wing losers, welcome along to the Joe Spivey YouTube channel where we discuss books and little else. And unfortunately, folks, you join me in the clutches of a really terrible disease, seemingly at the zenith of its power. As I say, a disease has breached my boundaries and is pillaging its way through my anatomy without repenting for one instant. I am shivering and shaking, and seemingly it has scuttled into my bedroom of an evening and has replaced my brain with that of Ron DeSantis's. So that effervescent, jabbering, toddler-esque gentleman to whom you have all become so irrevocably endeared has left the building, unfortunately, folks. So if you're wanting eloquence and dissection of texts and all of those types of things, then kindly absent yourselves. I will see you in the middle of the week when I'm feeling a little better. But yes, it's sort of, I'm not, another thing about this disease or illness or whatever I don't know whether it's Epstein-Barr, I don't know whether it's Spanish flu, I don't know whether it's pretentious Pratt's disease. I get an annual bout of that, as I'm sure you are aware. I'm not manifesting symptoms so egregious as to warrant any sympathy from my wider family. I'm not going through toilet paper. I'm not going... I'm not, or kitchen roll, I'm not rushing into the lavatory and, because of exudative diarrhea. It just happens that every single condyloid joint in my body aches, and I'm just, seemingly helplessly tired all of the time. But anyway, let's get on, folks. This is my random reviews of George Gissing's The Odd Women, which I've been reading. It's taken me rather a while to get through this, for many, many reasons. But yes, speaking of people completely enthralled to a higher power, I think that would be a conducive theme for this work. I can't quite remember when this was written. I think it's late Victorian, and it came to me very, very highly recommended. This is about, first of all, welcome if you're a new subscriber. These are my random reviews where I do not so much sort of give any professional, I don't employ any of my special expertise. Every single thing that I say in this video is entirely controvertible and just the consequence of random boyish impressions rather than anything, more objective or critically objective than that. So yeah, everything I say is controvertible, but let us crack on. So this is the story of three sisters who find themselves fatherless right at the start of this novel. Three Madden sisters. First of all, we have what's her name now? We have Virginia, who is a pretty energised and adventurous young soul. We have there's Virginia, and there is also the who becomes a little bit of the centrepiece of the novel. We have Monica, who is a little shyer, a little daintier, a little more impressionable, a little more naive, but a little more, sort of beautiful, as it were. And we have the first sister I'm going to continue to forget. They are rotund and sickly and, a little bit unadventurous and bedridden for lots of the novel. But yes, we start off generally with Monica, and all three of them are independent young women because they haven't a father or hopes of a suitor as of yet. They've got a small allowance bequeathed to them in his will, but it's, nothing that you could, it's not exactly riches beyond the dreams of avarice. So they're dotted around the country doing odds and sods, governess jobs, typists. Monica, for all that she's worth, stands behind a counter for 16 hours a day, utterly repugnant practices. And they, whilst in and around London, I can't quite remember how it is, but they happen upon what can only be described as a sort of a workshop for would-be prospective apprentices, for these new women who, again, want to be typists or want to do jobs that will allow them to work independently. It is run by a lady called Miss Barfoot, who is Barfoot, who is a stumpy but wise middle-aged woman who is, I think it's at one point she's described as the fervid prophetess of female emancipation, which is a decent encapsulation of what she is. She gives out a sort of a litany of exegeses on why it is that women ought to be free, and why it is that they ought to be taken, sort of vanquished from the dominion of men in every single regard. And she happens to have somebody working with her called Rhoda Nunn, I believe her name is. Very, very, very bizarre name. And she is, ladies and gentlemen, as per usual in these Victorian novels, the woman that I want to smash through those front French doors just now, and to come at me and tell me to be her most wedded husband, because she is everything that everything that an intended reader should want in a female. She is capable, considered, and yet not not infantile and childish and skittish in that way. She's full of ideas and is very, very ready to contradict anybody that happens to espouse an opinion with which she disagrees. She's, bold is the word I'm looking for, I think, pretty much. And Miss Barfoot, so, Monica goes back and the youngest sister goes back and forth to this apprenticeship house, this sort of very kind, a very dutiful workhouse, I guess, I don't know, workshop. And Miss Barfoot has a cousin called Everard Barfoot, who is a really, I think the sort of value neutral phrase would be charismatic figure, who has a little bit of a controversial past. He has taken advantage of a very small woman, a very young woman, and impregnates her and essentially disowns the child, and I think she commits suicide, and it's all very well. Yeah, again, spoiler alert, folks. Unbelievably, a gentleman can go through a book review without actually giving away some of the rudiments of the plot. But yeah, I'm here to do so. And then sort of one day when Monica is at church, she runs into a blundersome, nervous fool in the church pews, completely by random, whose name is Mr. Widowson, who is, unsure of himself and is sort of bizarrely keen to wed her, really. He is. I found myself very often annotating this, thinking why on earth it is that he is so very desperate to become enthralled in marriage. Monica laps all of this up. She has never been given attention by anybody whose circumstances are as auspicious as Mr. Widowson. But it turns out pretty much that both of those are looking for courteous attention and companionship rather than the rather more rather more significant surroundings of marriage. They just want somebody to talk to, and they take that partnership and friendship a little too far. Believe it or not, as is pretty much the case, Everard Barfoot, the young sprightly cousin of Miss Barfoot, establishes a frisson, a tete-a-tete, a very endearing and altogether appreciable love of Rhoda Nunn, and they have many conversations about the state of women's emancipation, because of course Gissing has to work with subtlety here in order not to disenfranchise absolutely everybody. You read some of the feminist tomes today and you would think that we had not advanced one jot in 140 years, but even Gissing realises that both socially, not quite politically yet, but socially, legally and financially, women's independence and freedom are moving up in the world, and that's what the odd women refers to. Those people who are not linked with a gentleman, with a would-be suitor, or with a kind and rich father. People, women that are essentially utterly alone in the world, who, yes, need to find a profession and need to guard off the wolves from the door as much as anybody else does in a system of free market capitalism. They need to have an amount of money, which means that they can, as I say, keep the wolves from the door and be independent amongst themselves. Gissing very, very nicely explores, what it is to be married, what it is to be independent, what it is to be secure in your worldviews and beliefs. It's a little bit much, I think. It's really very obvious what it is that Gissing's trying to do. I think a bit too obvious. And again, very rarely do I factor into my rationation, or my reasoning behind some of these novels, how much of a temporal constraint there was when the writer was composing it or compiling his notes or whatever. Just how, whether he was given an enormous amount of money and could spend 9 months to a year on the thing, or whether he had to spit it out in a couple of long and extended weekends, because it is very tutorial in its teachings. It's quite obvious what it is that he's trying to pry into, and that's perfectly fine. I should imagine this will be fodder for sort of secondary education. I could easily have been given this by one of my English teachers when I was 15 or 16, because it's, they do strive at those schools and institutions now. They strive for very obvious pearls of wisdom which the author is trying to give you. But of course there are some gorgeous descriptions in here. There are some excellent nuanced parsing of feeling and emotion. So yeah, it's thoroughly enjoyable, and also really rather short as well. So if you're somebody that whose attention span has been completely thrown asunder by the malevolences of TikTok or bidirectional digital media in any of its guises, then this is going to be something that you're going to look forward to, going to be able to get through in a weekend, hopefully, folks. So I do have a few passages that I want to highlight. Hopefully they, hopefully these quotations will carry the day, because as you may well have detected from here, I am a completely useless hominid these days, because yes, I've had my autonomy completely stripped by an invader. But yes, I've been told that I read these out rather quickly, so I'm going to slow myself down and, yes, hopefully give you a little bit of a more, arresting feeling as regards what I'm reading out. So this is about Miss Barfoot, who runs, again, the apprenticeship workshop. Though Miss Barfoot had something less than a woman's average stature, the note of her presence was personal dignity. She was handsome, and her carriage occasionally betrayed a consciousness of the fact. According to circumstances, she bore herself as the lady of aristocratic tastes, as a genial woman of the world, or as the fervid prophetess of female emancipation. I remembered that quote. And each character was supported with a spontaneity, a good-natured confidence which inspired liking and respect. A brilliant complexion and eyes that sparkled with habitual cheerfulness gave her the benefit of doubt when her age was in question. Her style of dress, gracefully ornate, would have led a stranger to presume her a wedded lady of some distinction. There you are, you can already see that person, can't you, folks? I needn't supply any more adjectives. That was gorgeously done by Mr. Gissing, or Guessing. Surname pronunciation is yet to be confirmed. So then we're looking at, again, Miss Barfoot gathers in all of the women who are, I don't know, they're not in her employ, but are under her stewardship, and, will essentially just stand on a chair or the pulpit and extemporize about the state of womanhood, or female emancipation. So whether woman, she'd probably be finger wagging, I would imagine, so I'll try and act it out. Whether woman is the equal of man, I neither know nor care. We are not his equal in size, in weight, in muscle, and for all I can say, we may have less power of brain. That has nothing to do with it. Enough for us to know is that our natural growth has been stunted. The mass of women have always been paltry creatures, and their paltriness has proved a curse to men. So if you like to put it in this way, we are working for the advantage of men as well as for our own. And that is a very enduring point which survives right to today, folks. There are far too many acolytes of Ben Shapiro and Stephen Crowder in America, or some tendrils of the Piers Morgan fan club or fan brigade, bits and bobs of alt-right Petersonian followers who think that the feminist cause, quite rightly in some cases, is not pro-women but anti-men, and will be debilitating to their life circumstances as much as it will be beneficial to female circumstances. But that, of course, at this time is not true. That is not, for the first 7 waves of feminism, that was not true. But because we're at the 94th wave now, of course, things are starting to differ slightly. But next up we have, this chapter's called Motives Meeting, and this is Everard Barfoot and his involvement with the Rhoda nun. Everard Barfoot's advances surprised her not a little. So this is Rhoda's thinking. Judging him as a man wholly without principle, she supposed at first that this was merely his way with all women, and resented it as impertinence. But even then she did not dislike the show of homage. What her mind regarded with disdain, her heart was all but willing to feed upon after its long hunger. Barfoot interested her, and not the less because of his evil reputation. He was one of the men for whom women, doubtless more than one, had sacrificed themselves. She could not but regard him with sexual curiosity. And her interest grew, her curiosity was more haunting as their acquaintance became a sort of friendship. She found that her moral disapprobation wavered or was altogether forgotten. Perhaps it was to compensate for that this, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, that's a very interesting part there as well. The centrality of licentiousness or sexual desire in any form to the female experience is exemplified again in this novel. The idea that who is it? Yeah, that Everard can, go dallying and messing and frolicking about with hanky panky with other women in his past, and frankly manipulating a naive person clearly in the past. He can do that with impunity, and yet if his female equivalent were to do so, she would be burnt in effigy at dawn. But yes, this is another section about because Rhoda is again a nice dense character because her faults are laid to be observed as well, because it is not. We are made to believe that it's not solely about treasuring the affections of a man, but also just the self-aggrandizing concomitant of that affection, which she so treasures and values. So here we go. When Everard's made more advances, she had gained her wish, had enjoyed her triumph. A raising of the finger, and Everard Barfoot would marry her. Assured of that, she felt a new contentment in life. At times when she was occupied with things as far as possible from this experience, a rush of joy would suddenly fill her heart and make her cheek glow. She moved among people with a conscious dignity, quite unlike that which had only satisfied her need of distinction. She spoke more softly, exercised more patience, smiled where she had been wont to scoff. Miss Nunn was altogether a more amiable person. And she often vacillates between that and a sort of self-disgust, because she is, for many women, a sort of admirable and imitable figurehead of these new independent, really quite jarring women who not only do think that they don't need men, but actively dislike 85% of them. And she thinks that by possibly accepting Everard Barfoot's hand, she will send out the wrong messages, give off the wrong vibes, as the modern neologism would have it. And so, yeah, there's a bit of a confliction there. But yeah, nice, gorgeous writing in places, as I'm sure you've just detected there. Not nearly as I don't know. Yeah, just not nearly as that gorgeous writing wasn't nearly as frequent for me. And so yeah, I guess I am my own worst enemy in that I've just read a load of trollop, and I'm interspersing this with bits of profound poetry, as it were. And so whenever you come across something that just isn't quite absolutely astronomically revelatory and contemplative, then things can seem mundane. So goodness knows what I'm going to think if ever I open a book of contemporary literature over the next few days and weeks. But yes, that was George Gissing's Odd Women. Next up, we've got Dorian Gray's Dorian Gray's A Picture of Oscar Wilde, folks. Yes. Oscar Wilde's Picture of Dorian Gray, which is a couple of hundred pages, so I'll rip through that in the next few days and hopefully have a more consummate and considered review than the festival of idiocy with which I've burdened you today. But yes, thanks ever so much for watching BookTube, and goodbye.